government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Smart. He remembers everything. Goodness gracious, he sure knows numbers. And he's the only president that has ever remembered H20, H200, NVIDIA's Blackwell. He knows our next generation, Rubin. He has just an amazing memory. And we're sitting here in a new factory. On the first time I met him, he said he wants to restore the manufacturing capacity of the United States. He wants the United States to be reindustrialized. He wants a secure and resilient supply chain. He wants to move semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States. Literally, we're sitting in a plant that is a direct result of the first conversation I had with President Trump.
This is in Fort Worth, Texas.
We're in Fort Worth, Texas, and he's single-mindedly about creating jobs. He's single-mindedly about reshaping the American economy and the labor workforce.
I mean, I hate defending myself. I mean, it's just, these are people who are taking money and direction from same. And the truth is, I don't own anything in Doha. I've never taken money from the Qataris or any other government. I don't even have a bank loan. I have no investors. I have no debt. Mm-hmm. You know, my opinions, you may have no control over me at all. And I own my company with my college roommate. So that's the extent of my financial life. Whatever. Qatar, I love Qatar. I really like Qatar. And the Israelis like Qatar too, which is why Benjamin Netanyahu asked the Qatari government to send money to Hamas. So it was actually Netanyahu who asked Qatar to send money to Hamas. Now they're like attacking the Qataris for being a tool of Hamas. The whole thing is so dishonest, I can't deal with it, that he will never be impeached for. If this were Liechtenstein or Congo bribing 90% of our lawmakers to toe the Liechtenstein or Congo line, I'd be totally opposed to it. It doesn't make me anti-Congolese or anti-Liechtensteinian. I'm not a racist for thinking that. I'm an American who wants my lawmakers to vote on behalf of my country. Like, it's that simple. It's literally that simple.
That there would be de-escalation in the Red Sea and the Houthis now attack two Saudi ships. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, I hope that they'll stop. They shouldn't really do that. They got suckered into this by the Iranians. You know, the Houthis largely were smart and stayed out of all this throughout the conflict. But they now apparently have gotten themselves suckered into this, going after Saudi Arabia and their ships. And by the way, that's, you know, I was reading reports a few hours ago that there was actually a Saudi fuel ship that's flagged Chinese. It's a Chinese ship. Are they going to blow up the Chinese ship? And this becomes a problem for China. This will become a problem for the whole world. But I hope that will de-escalate, because I think the Houthis, frankly, got snookered into this thing by the Iranians, and they were smart to stay out of it, and they should stay out of it, and they should stop. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, it's not a positive development. We'll see what happens. These people who are calling us every day, begging, let's do a deal, they send us messages through other countries, third countries. I mean, they're running out of countries to send. Even I had countries here coming up to me, oh, I just spoke to the Iranians, they want to do a deal. The problem is, every time these people do a deal, they either break it, or after they make it, they want to change the deal. So they're probably not ready to do a deal yet, but they will be soon, because the price they're paying is very high, despite their tough talk and their flowery language and their stupid Lego videos they put out. I've never seen them, but they put these things out on social media. Despite all that bravado, they are suffering tremendously, and they're going to suffer more until they come to their senses. They're not there yet, unfortunately.
The current mayor rose to power by repackaging failed ideals of the past as a moral cause of the future. But in Georgia, you know that beneath that youthful veneer lies the oldest impulse in politics, which is to concentrate power and then call it compassion. Show me someplace where this has ever worked. Moscow, Caracas, Havana. These workers' paradises have all ended up as deprivation hellscapes. So at their core, Trump accounts represent the triumph of capitalism over socialism.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I'm sorry for the last few days of, I guess you could call it technical difficulties. We're in the middle of a war zone here in Beirut, and the internet this trip is just really not working well, but we're dealing with it, and I think we found a solution until we get back for the next couple days. I want to say hello to the crew in the chat. Thank you for your perseverance and all the good comments in the last couple days, as we obviously had issues getting the show out to you. Also, check out whatfinger.com, a great aggregator site of ours. We've been here on the ground in Beirut, meeting with sources and our new media partners. We are opening a new media outlet primarily focused on the Lebanese diaspora, which is global. There's 15 million of them globally, and they have the ability to vote in Lebanon's elections. And they're mostly Christians. So we are here to try to energize that base and educate them to really make Lebanon great again, the only Christian community, the Christian nation here in the Middle East, not the only Christian community. So it's a really important mission. We're trying to unite the Christian communities everywhere across the world. And Lebanon, it all needs to start here, as I was told this morning by one source. As I mentioned, the war is going on. We're going to this is a pre-tape. We're going to run this here in a bit for the show today on Thursday. We're going to have two great guests. Emerald Robinson, which we tried the other day. She's going to join us in the first hour. And she's going to join us in the first hour. And in the second hour, Pete Blaber, we're going to do a fantastic Ukraine SitRep, really in depth as to what's happening on the ground. Let's do the mission brief. Today is July 23rd. I'm your host, Todd Wood. Here's your mission brief. The Night 12 over Iran strikes against Bushehr nuclear province. Trump threatens the infrastructure. Rubio says no deal. The Trump make a deal. The art of the deal is happening real time as Trump tries to get some kind of good outcome for the United States out of Iran. President Trump also flew to Georgia with the remains of Lieutenant Tyler Feehan aboard Air Force One. That's a cool story. Not a cool story, but a sympathetic story for the president to do that for his family, and we appreciate that. First political defeat for Colombia's president-elect. One of our great Colombian writers has that on Miami Independent. Fraud Nation, Trump HHS pulls more than $1 billion in Medicaid funds to states suspended of fraud. And the teachers unions, what's going on with those commie teachers unions? We'll be right back after this break. Stay with us on the SCIF. We got a great show for you today to make up for the last couple of days. So stay with us.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, MyPillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Okay, we're back with you downtown Beirut in the Christian sector, right? And Mar Mikhail outside of Ashrafia. If you know the Beirut area, it's the area that was most devastated by the blast. It's always the Christian sector. Christian areas get hurt by the problems in the region, and a blast a few years ago really just leveled the Christian financial sector and hurt their power base. Don't worry, there was no intention behind that. It was all accident. Wink, wink. So let's walk through some stories that I mentioned. First of all, we're here meeting with the Christian parties, and Lebanon is becoming really a civilizational anchor for the Christian community in the Middle East, and it is what it should be. It was the first Christian area where Jesus Christ walked after he moved up, and the religion grew through that whole region after he moved up into this area, and then the apostles and Apostle Paul and all of that came and moved north into Antioch, and that's how the Christian church was born. So it all happened here, and that's why this is such a really, really important area. And what we're trying to do is and we were very glad to see the day we arrived, Lebanese President Aoun was in the White House. No coincidence there. There are no coincidences, if you know what I mean. So we are thankful that people are reading our stuff over the last year on this very important subject of Christian growth, economic growth, and civilization and cultural growth across the world. President Trump, you can find on the Georgia Record, flew the family of Lieutenant Tyler Feehan aboard Air Force One and with his remains back to Georgia. We're very thankful for the president doing that. It was a very nice gesture. He was obviously emotionally upset over the issue as well. So that's on the Georgia Record. The headline over Iran strikes in the Bushehr province against infrastructure, and the art of the deal on full display as so they're saying Iran is calling to make a deal, but every time they make a deal, they break it or say they want a new deal. So I think you're seeing as they try to deal with this problem, and we hope this war ends soon. The Ukraine war is a big issue, a big problem. We're going to talk in depth about that in the second hour with Pete Blaber. First, political defeat. If you and look at this article on Colombia's president-elect La Espriella, insightful article by Camilo Riano, one of our great Connecticut paper, but he's now focusing on Latin America, so you're going to find a lot more content from him. And Trump HHS Kennedy pulls more than $1 billion in Medicaid funds to states. Money. It's what is just funding and fueling this Marxist revolution and takedown of our government. So we're glad to see Secretary Kennedy continuing to work on that. And then on the EastonGazette.com, our paper in Maryland, teachers unions double down on crazy leftist policies of division. We're seeing a lot of whacked out stuff coming out of the teachers unions. They're going full commie, they masks off, and they're going for broke for power, as you know, these kind of unions literally always do throughout history. The Bolshevik Revolution, etc. Eastern Europe is prime examples of that, Cuba, etc. So, all right, we're going to take a break. Then Emerald Robinson, and this is a pre-tape, as I said, so we're going to play. I'm not going to come back in. We're just going to run the interview, and then Pete Blaber in the second hour, and then we'll wrap up the show. Tomorrow we've got a great show as well. We'll be in Patron, Lebanon, meeting with sources up on the coast in Old Phoenician City. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Every day, your data is being tracked, collected, and sold, often without you even realizing it. Big tech companies control your devices, your apps, and the information you share. From your messages to your browsing habits, everything is being monitored and stored. Over time, we've traded privacy for convenience, and most people don't even question it. But what if you could take that control back? That's where Mark 37 comes in. Mark 37 provides privacy-focused phones, laptops, and tablets designed to give you full control over your digital life. With secure systems, expert support, and simple tools, they make it easier to step away from constant tracking and data collection. Because privacy isn't just a feature, it's a fundamental choice. It's about protecting your data, your freedom, and your future. Take back control of your digital life with Mark 37.
By the way, let me just highlight, you saw the ad for mark37.com/CDM. And by the way, I wanted to say I'm starting my journey with Sean. I'm going to be getting a Ghost phone and then upgrading to a Ghost computer soon, because I am going to unplug for the Matrix. And you can follow me along on my journey. So mark37.com/CDM is where you want to go to do that. Find the webinar, sign up for the webinar, and learn everything you need to know to get started. And then you can also sign up for a free 30-minute consultation on privacy there at mark37.com/CDM. But I'm looking forward to it, and I have been worried about privacy for some time. So I'm going to be taking the plunge and changing my life and unplugging from the Matrix, and I'm really looking forward to it. So maybe you can join me. Welcome back to the SCIF. I had a bad time with communications with Emerald Robinson the other day, but we're back, and I'm really happy that she agreed to come on and speak with us. Emerald, we were talking about John Solomon, and you have a lot there. I used to work for him. What do you see? I see a lot of subterfuge on the election machines. What do you see?
Yeah, well, let's look at his track record and his history. And it's interesting. You used to work with him. I had a brief stint of kind of working with him as well when he was he was probably still at the Washington Times, but he started the venture Circa, right, for Sinclair Crockett.
Correct. Yeah,
I did last year. I was working out of that office for a little bit. Yeah. So, I didn't think much of him then. I mean, I just didn't think about it. But it was really in the first Trump term, 45, when Bill Barr had become Attorney General, that he caught my attention. Remember, he was going on Hannity, Sean Hannity, almost nightly, with a couple other journalists, and Sean Hannity wearing his CIA lapel pin. And John Solomon was assuring Hannity's audience, which included none other than President Donald Trump himself, because Donald Trump really I don't know if he still does, but I know at least up to 2022, he was still religiously watching Sean Hannity nightly if he was around. So I think President Trump was the intended target audience. But Solomon was assuring everyone that indictments were coming. He had told you he'd seen internal documents, grand juries had been impaneled. There was accountability coming. It was coming imminently. It was soon. It could be any day now. He did this almost every night. And I knew that as a White House correspondent in the Trump White House, who was there day in and day out, I was also extremely well sourced in the Department of Justice at the time, even under Bill Barr. I would go to lunch with my sources. I'd call up my sources. I'd meet with them. And no one could confirm this to me. No one could say that indictments were coming. Also, you know, and I know that even when a grand jury gets impaneled, it's supposed to be top secret. In a city like Washington, D.C., in the political swamp, that doesn't remain a secret very long. Rumors start circulating. John Solomon seemed to be the only hearing or getting this information. Now, you also have to remember that John Solomon was very close to Carrie Kupak. She was the spokeswoman for Bill Barr. Okay. She was so much more than that. Now, one thing my sources at the DOJ at the time would tell me is that she was basically like the top advisor. This young, very young woman, she might have been 30 at the time. This very young woman was really who Bill Barr listened to. Now, she went on to, she's now a justice editor at Fox News. Okay. She's also married to Keith Urban of Javelin, which is a kind of PR book firm that was responsible in helping a lot of these anti-Trump figures in the Trump administration, those who would kind of break with the president, get these huge book advances for books that ultimately did not end up selling, just if you want to know where she ended up. But Solomon has continued to remain a so-called conservative journalist. I knew then that something wasn't on the level because I knew that there were no indictments, and there ultimately were no indictments. But you know what it did? What his nightly reports on Sean Hannity did? It kept Donald Trump complacent. And Donald Trump himself thought indictments were coming, and they never did. And then they installed Biden in the White House. And you didn't hear much from John Solomon really after that. And let me tell you, they made him now the, you know, I was talking to someone else about this. Oh, this is the term a former intelligence person used. They've made John Solomon the oracle of election, crime, fraud, security.
Yes.
And he has not really had much to say about it since 2020. And he'll report on things like here and there. And I have had sources, I have had so many people call me up since I started publicly talking about him. I've been skeptical of him all the way back for years now, right? 7 years. But I've had so many other journalists and then sources, you know, people who had been involved in grassroots election, the grassroots election security fight, call me up over the last week and a half, Todd, and tell me all kinds of stories, even one related to the Hunter Biden laptop, Todd.
Well, I, talk about sources. I had somebody tell me while in Rudy's circle that the president was calling Rudy asking why isn't Bill Barr doing anything. I think that was about the same time frame. So you may be right with that info op against President Trump. It seemed to be working. But my point now is that you hear him talking about China, and China's got into our systems. They hacked our systems. They got all our data. But you don't hear him talking about getting rid of the machines at all. In fact, he's pushing back on that. So I see that as the key. Anybody who's misdirecting and not saying get rid of the machines today, there's so much evidence out there. We have a source or a contributor, Chris Gleason, who has listed out all of the fraud stuff. You've had him on the show many times. And people, he doesn't go on any other shows, but you're in mine because nobody asked him, I guess. But I mean, but that information is out there, and Solomon's not talking about it, right? He's talking about China.
No, he's talking about China. He's somewhat, to a certain degree, a little bit talking about Venezuela. Nothing about Serbia. And he's definitely not talking about our own intelligence community, other than saying, well, they didn't want to come forth with the China news, and they purposely withheld that from the president, but he stopped short of saying that our own intelligence community was complicit and most likely involved. And there's lots of intelligence there that suggests that. I've seen a lot of intelligence myself. And it's all this other thing, but that as long as we can, the fix he is suggesting is to patch. We're talking a lot about a patch. He went on CBS News following the president's address, and the anchor, which I thought was actually a pretty good question, was like, what does the president want to do from here? What is the way forward? And John Solomon's solution was a patch. When I talk to
a software patch was what you mean.
A software patch. Keep using the election machine. Any cybersecurity expert I talk to, any voting machine expert that I talk to, any former intelligence person that I talk to, and I ask them about the suggestion of a patch fix, they laugh, Todd. They say that is the most ridiculous thing ever. It will not keep intruders out, and it certainly won't keep out our intelligence community, who may be involved in it as well. So the patches just mean we're keeping the machines. And I've been saying this for a while now, probably even since the end of last year. When was it that they started announcing the Liberty Vote takeover of Dominion voting machines? I knew then.
It was about a year ago, 8 months. Yeah.
I think it was around Thanksgiving, if I recall correctly. I knew then that the fix was in, and that there was a concerted effort, not just by Democrats, right? This is not Democrats, to keep the voting machines. And now with the controlled release of this information, I am now assured that that is what is going on here. Now, why do they want to keep the voting machines? They're expensive. They've been proven that no matter what you do to them, they're vulnerable. They can be hacked. They break down. They are connected to the internet. That's definitively true now. Contradicting what Dominion CEO John Poulos has testified before even state legislatures, right, and Congress. It's true. So there is no reason on earth you would keep these. Now, what I have been hearing, and I heard over the weekend, because I was around a lot of people this weekend, I heard that they're behind the scenes assuring people, we can't get rid of them before 2026. There's just no way. We just don't have the time.
That was the same thing in Georgia when they said, okay, we don't have time to fix the QR codes, even though the courts have said they're illegal until, we kick the can. Maybe in patch back in Colorado when Tina Peeners, imaged the server before and after, that was a patch, a trusted build, or whatever you want to call it. So a patch can and losing the evidence.
And that's why so many of the people who have worked on, testing, audit, absolutely does nothing. But these people who were involved, even at the bureaucratic level and the intelligence level on in this space, will tell you that impossible to tell. You can, if you get into the forensics and you actually get your hands on the machine, you can kind of see something. But that, and look, that is part of what was explained in the intelligence that was just released and declassified, right, on the whitehouse.gov website. You can go download these for yourself, whitehouse.gov/election-integrity. I laughed a little bit when I saw the summary, right? So the CIA does a summary basically of what they found and the intelligence they have related particularly to Smartmatic. That's the voting machine company that was really the genesis of Sequoia, Dominion, and now Liberty Vote. They came out of Venezuela. I think your audience probably knows all of this. If they don't, they can go to my X feed.
Yes.
Pinned at the top is a very long thread that explains. I go way back. I try to give the history to bring you up to speed to where we are now. And I did this a long time, months ago, because I knew there would be some kind of release like this, right? And to go ahead and prepare people for what they were going to see, especially if they did try to obfuscate, right? Which they are doing. So I'm glad I got to put that out a while ago. But even in you reading the intelligence, they tell you that all the way back in 2006 to 2012, our intelligence community knew that Venezuela had developed a system to manipulate the votes in a way that you could not trace it, that you could not tell these votes had been flipped. And they had intelligence that Hugo Chavez was so pleased with his people for being so successful in their effort, right? We have all that. So we know that it can be done, yet they go out there and try to tell you that that is not true to your face. But their underlying intelligence, now they're trying to tell you, well, you know, yes, we found that they could do this. They did develop the system. And yes, Smartmatic did ultimately acquire a U.S. company named Sequoia that had voting machines. Then they, you know, yeah, they put their people in Sequoia, because even on the LinkedIn to this day, you can go find these people. You can look up the names of people who work for Smartmatic. You can see many of them still have their LinkedIn updated. I've been trying to capture all this. I've been screenshotting and PDFing, and because at some point with all this information coming out, they're going to wipe their histories. But there's, you know, they moved from Smartmatic to Sequoia. So we embedded Venezuelan nationals that helped Chavez steal his election, built the system for Venezuela that led to Maduro. We put them in U.S. companies. Some of those people went to Dominion. I'm still checking Liberty Vote to see who has migrated there, right? Some of them are now off, you know, shot off to other companies. There's a guy who's went to Hart Intercivic, another voting machine company we might not talk as much about, but they're in many states. They're in my state of Virginia. They have this, but they're trying to tell you, well, but we have no evidence they did this in a U.S. election. Give me a break. The only way they're saying that is based on, you know, stuff like polling, and, you know, we know the polls are rigged to make to help, you know, do the fix. So it's laughable when you read through it. It honestly is.
Well, we have all the data from Florida, Michigan, Arizona, Maryland, with the blank ballots and all of that. I mean, the data's there. In fact, Florida just prevented us from seeing the data. That's how good the data was. They passed a law saying, the election integrity law, that you can no longer see the data. So
probably in part because for Gleason, who was very good at getting the data.
Yeah, exactly. So where do we go from here, Gleason or Emerald? I know you don't have a lot of time, but what do you see in the future here?
I don't know. I think we're at a crossroads. Right?
Yeah.
There is a very strong effort to keep these voting machines. And I do not buy that they will do anything about them by 2028. I do believe that President Donald Trump does still want to get rid of them. So I think it will really take him putting his foot down. I've been getting lots of calls about my reporting and my criticism, particularly about a particular person you had me on to talk about today. And to that I say, look, I'm going to hold their feet to the fire until something's done. And I'm just reporting the truth, because I have literally lived this every day since November 3rd, 2020. There has not been a day that has went by, Todd, that I haven't looked at something related to these voting machines, election security. I've been deposed twice in cases related to them. I have talked to the engineers who helped develop the Smartmatic voting system software. I've talked to different people all over the globe related to this issue. So I know when they're putting out something and what it is, and if they're trying to misdirect us or if they're not telling us the whole truth. So until it's fully out there and transparent, and here's what we hear, okay? Here's what they say to a certain degree. They say, well, you have to give this some bites to the American public. They can't, it's like they did with the COVID vaccines and the COVID, the origins of COVID. And the restrictions on it. Well, you can't just tell everyone, because you can't let them know, because we got to protect them. That's the same excuses they're using here. They're saying, well, it could cause a constitutional crisis if we just put it all out there, because what we do know based on whistleblowers and honestly intelligence, and remember what we found with USAID and how they'd been using American taxpayer dollars to put Smartmatic in different countries like Ukraine, like the Philippines, and now there's a federal case against Smartmatic related to bribery in the Philippines, but it's actually much more than that. Some of that's alluded to already in the federal filings down in the Southern District of Florida. It's more than bribery, folks. And that's going to
Sure.
come out in this. The Southern District of Florida has actually been our kind of saving grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going on. So what we know is that they have been doing this and they've been involved in it. So it's 72 countries. So it is going to have some fallout, right? But we're already in a constitutional crisis. And
Big time.
Americans already don't trust the elections. It's not just Republicans, it's Democrats too. And Rasmussen polling done by Mark Mitchell for a couple years now has shown that Americans largely already don't trust their elections. So it's time to burn the house down and fix it.
Completely agree, because we have no republic other than that. And then you've got all the low-level actors like Kemp, lower level, who are all involved in this, and literally up to their eyeballs with Chinese influence and all of that.
It's Chinese influence, it's uniparty, it's corporate interest, right? And I've been trying to lay this out because I feel like there's a lot of, we're seeing influence ops now. We're seeing information ops. And there is a concerted effort to keep Americans divided, because you can't fix things when you're divided. And
correct.
I see a lot of binary options presented to the American people. Well, if you don't like this or this money going here, that means you're for this side. And that's not true. They're false binaries. And that's on purpose, I think, to keep everyone from paying attention to what really needs to be fixed. I think now is the time to do it. And look, some people say, oh, well, because I reported on the Venezuelan and Cuban and Chinese influence and the office in Serbia, saying, oh, well, you're trying to misdirect from the people in the United States, like our own intelligence, right? We know that there weren't just people, and I've talked to some intelligent people. I said, well, there's got to be people in the United States, right? And our intelligence community knows what's going on, right? They had to be involved in doing it.
Sure.
Given that, how do we not have at least one whistleblower really come out? And someone, look, there's probably 100 guys who do know what's up, who have been involved in this, but they fear for their lives and they fear for the lives of the family. This is massive. It's the biggest scandal and conspiracy of our time, if not in the history of our country. So they're fearful. Our intelligence community has absolutely been involved in this. Also, we have names. Here's the thing. There is a Venezuelan whistleblower, basically.
Yes.
Like Hugo Carvajal, who's in custody in New York. He is given names already of domestic traitors who they flipped. And it's in the CIA, it's in the FBI, and it's in the State Department. Some of these names people might know. You'd have to be kind of in the trenches, but you would know. These are not low-level people. And those things have been provided, but nothing's been done about it. It's just that, you're asking the CIA and FBI to investigate itself. And these are people who are in their, these are their colleagues. So there is that. And I don't want the foreign influence part of this to deflect from that. And then you do have the Stephen Richards in Maricopa County, right? And you have what happened there with the changing of the margins during the 2022 midterms and Kerry Lake's race. You have what goes on in Fulton County, Georgia, and what we saw with, a water main break or whatever they're reporting on, and then they continue to count. So it's not just one thing. I mean, it really is death by 1,000 cuts, and there's multiple facets of this. I've done a lot of reporting on the voting machines because I just started digging in on November 3rd when I realized something is off here. November 4th, particularly, right? I wake up and it's a whole different ballgame. And then I started learning. I didn't know anything about the voting machines. Really, I'd seen some reporting out of Georgia. Remember, Politico, NBC were all worried that they were going to steal it for Trump because of how the 2018 midterms went down for Brian Kemp. And they thought that Dominion voting machines and all this were going to be used, for the benefit of the Republicans. But then when it didn't go that way, they sure didn't want to talk about it anymore. So there was a lot of open source reporting to already go to from the Democrats who had been worried about it in the past. So it's more than just the foreign conspiracy, but there is the corporate interest that marries with the China influence, that marries with the uniparty. And then you have this big globalist cabal, right? And they do it.
Well, they don't want to lose the ability. They don't want to lose the ability to influence for their monetary gains down the road, whether it be a corporation or salaries for or money laundering for these insiders. I mean, they're all getting rich, and that's what it's about. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of parties with a vested interest in controlling our election.
So true. Emerald, thanks. I know you have to run. Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll have you back.
I'm glad it worked out. Thanks, Todd.
All right.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine, medications that have been FDA for decades, they are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. Pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong, it has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs
actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it. Fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and Ira. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to Ukraine SitRep. I am on the ground in Beirut, doing a lot of reporting here on this conflict, but the Ukraine conflict is raging, and I think it's moving into a different stage, and we see kind of an all-out information war to try, in my view, and maybe Pete's view, to keep the war going and to bring a different reality than what's actually happening on the ground. Pete, what do you think is happening?
Yeah, you called it right there. It's another massive coordinated information op. It's multi-pronged. It's a huge amount coming from the EU, but also American influencers. And what we'll get to in a moment is some of our own administration officials. Back to the Kellogg syndrome. It's not just. It's not just the EU. It's not just one political party. This globalist thing is hard to fathom, and it's the information is you described it as poking the bear, and I think everyone is witnessing that right now. It's hard to fathom because. We know the EU has no military capability to even match Russia in a short-term conflict. So you would think they would be extra circumspect about not, giving Russia any more motivation to act than they already have. They're firing those cruise missiles all the way into Moscow right now and beyond. Some of those have 250 kilogram warheads on them. They're very powerful. And of course, those images are flooded across the airways also in accordance with what, the purpose of the IO campaign is. And I'll just call it, twofold. Ukraine is winning and Russia is losing. The why is hard to fathom. It's hard to get inside globalist head, as we've pointed out the entire time. I think one reason is what we've talked about. Desperate men make desperate moves. They see what's happening in Ukraine, the deterioration on the battlefield, which we'll get to in a moment. But I think there's a bigger problem, and I just call it a logic problem. An inability for world leaders to think logically. And, what does that mean? Well, it means thinking independent of emotions. So emotions are political thoughts are emotional thoughts. They have no relevance in reality. They're politics. Just like we see here in the U.S., no matter what President Trump does, it's negative, whether it's a tax break, or securing the borders, things that, clearly the masses in this country want, and the masses in any country want. They want safety and security, health and happiness, and family and friends.
Let me jump in there for a second, because I think what's going on is you have, as you said, the desperation on the battlefield. So they're trying, it's almost a race against time to impact the Russian Federation negatively, and especially the civilian population, because they're going after wild berries, hitting multiple warehouses, which is the Russian Amazon, for those people who don't know. So those are, there could be military supplies in there, of course, and probably are, but the real impact is on the Russian citizen. And I think there's a misconception that that's going to somehow force a revolution against Putin. I don't see that happening at all. In fact, the exact opposite. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. First off, the logically, it goes back to the logically. So if you think unemotionally, then you have to understand the Russian mindset. And that's been absent from this point, because Russia doesn't need to create and distribute any kind of propaganda themselves. The Europeans have done it for them. It's very clear to everyone in Russia that this is not a war against Ukraine. It's a war against NATO and the EU, and the EU specifically, as far as NATO goes. But no one in Russia has any doubt about that, because the Europeans, say it. There are speeches. You don't have to doctor the videos. They call for the breakup of Russia. And, that's been the goal since the unelected officials in 2013 choreographed the Maidan protests and overthrew the duly elected president and administration in Ukraine of Viktor Yanukovych. So it's been going on the whole time. They just don't understand that. The Russian people are more united than they've ever been, because it's them against basically the Western world. And then, the economic thing is, you continue to hear that even with the wild berries warehouse breaking up. I mean, these are tiny things. That's, as you said, an Amazon warehouse. There's a gigantic one down the highway from my house. One Amazon warehouse blowing up is not going to change anything on the battlefield. And instead, it pisses off all the people who work there, all the people who had goods, being sent out or were expecting to receive them. It just does not make any sense. But, they translate that into this media IO campaign, and we've got some examples of that to just show how inflammatory it is. And we say this all the time, but it's important if we have new viewers. There's nothing political about this. That's why you and I aren't taking a side in this, other than the side of stopping the senseless killing that's going on for no reason other than political and emotional thoughts by these individuals, because they've already gone all in on Russia bad, we have to win this war. So they just can't unpaint themselves from the corner that they've painted themselves into. But the danger is they really are playing with fire. At some point, Russia's just going to have enough. They're going to hit Putin's house or some other target that gives them no other option but to take out some of these factories, missile factories and whatnot, drone factories in Britain or Germany or whatnot. And for some reason, that's not landing on the Europeans. Instead, they seem to be all in on, just like they were in 13 and 14. Don't worry, Russia's a paper tiger, which you'll see again as we go along here, the incredible hypocrisy of, on the one hand, saying, Russia's a paper tiger, we can do anything we want. And on the other hand, saying they're going to invade Europe at any time. They're going to use nuclear weapons. And we're going to show some of that right now. So let's go to that first
slide.
Yeah. So this is just, again, an inflammatory lie. Russia doesn't need to do anything to stoke anger in Britain or in all of Europe about these insane immigration policies that have created the current predicament in Europe, the economic and political predicament. All the politicians have the lowest approval ratings: Merz, Starmer, Macron. Starmer's out now, but that's why he's out. Their economies are in ruins, and their economies are in ruins because economies are zero-sum games. You have only X amount comes in, and you can only put X amount out. But with the mass immigration and the welfare system that they've attached to it and the prioritization of these immigrants, these countries are going broke. So, this article tries to blame Putin for the immigration tensions that are sparking disorder across Europe.
That's kind of funny, actually.
It is funny,
it's
but
ridiculous.
they don't. That's what I mean about logic. They not only don't understand Russia, they don't understand people in their own countries, because no one in Britain thinks that Russia's behind their own anger with what's happening with the rapes, the crime, and the economy in each of these countries. So that's the first one. Then I'll show the dichotomy. Now you show the next one. This is, Russia. Russia is going to attack Poland and the Baltics. And this is the top NATO general saying this. So, this is where this logic issue, it can't just be blamed on the politicians anymore. This is a military officer. I think he's an Italian 4-star who's in charge and who said this. But same thing, military officers are supposed to think and 1 or 2 steps. So, on the one hand, Russia's losing. We don't have it up here, but there's another article that says they're losing 1,000 a day, which is in the first months of this year. And, just like in the U.S., when you hear these accusations, the accusation is a confession to what they themselves are doing or have done, and they try to blame it on whoever their competition or and that's what you're seeing, but it doesn't make any sense. And then this next one is, a byproduct of that. Limited nuclear weapons. So I I combine this one with the one about immigration, the one about potential attacks on other European countries as, propaganda 101, which is use fear to manipulate your people. And that's what you're seeing. So now you got the fear of they're behind the immigration thing. They're going to attack other countries in Europe. And Putin's thinking of using nuclear weapons and attacking Europe in response. He's under pressure to do that. Again,
you can see just the desire for nuclear war here. I mean, they are really just manipulating, and it's the same way they started the war. They caused all this. Russia's going to invade Ukraine. Well, they were poking. Come on, it's like that meme where you got, two, what do you call them, scorpions fighting, and you got Lockheed and Raytheon written over the two kids with the sticks. Like, come on, do something. That's kind of like what I see here with Europe.
Yeah.
They're just poking as much, try to get the conflict going.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, and it just shows this, again, detachment from reality. There's no upside left for Europe in this, and except peace. And what's really funny about it is the economies of all three of those countries, Britain, France, and Germany, could turn around drastically if they just stopped the charade of sanctions, especially around energy, gas, and oil. So, it's a logic-based problem, and it extends to the battlefield. You had asked me before we got on camera about, what's happening on the battlefield. Who really controls Constantinople? And this next shot shows the propaganda involved in that too. And I confirmed this with guys on the ground. Constantinople has been secured 100%. However, the Ukrainians did another one of these desperate men make desperate moves. They sent two guys in, a singleton mission. They were probably pretty good soldiers. So a waste of good manpower. They snuck into a bombed out apartment on the edge of Constantinople, and they unfurled this Ukrainian flag with pictures of Syrskyi and Zelensky on them, one of whom just resigned last night. And as if to say, we have Constantinople. Unfortunately, these two made a cardinal error. After they took the picture and put the flags down, they got on their radio to send back to the rear, mission accomplished, we're done, and ignoring, again, reality, the Russians' strength, in my opinion, above almost everything else, is electronic warfare. They instantly intercepted the signal, sent a nearby squad to this location, captured both these guys, and another embarrassing moment for Ukraine. But this is what's happening on the battlefield, and beyond the propaganda, just thinking about what you're doing to your own soldiers, sending them on missions like this that have no effect on anything, yet both these guys are now dead. And it just shows you don't care about your troops. So again, we mentioned the politicians, but it's not just the politicians. It's military officers, it's intelligence officers, and State Department officers in all these Western countries who also have the same issue. And the next article we're going to show was in SOFX, and it reports on what Radcliffe, the head of the CIA, just put out at a function in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to call that up. You don't have to open it up, but I want to read a couple points out of it because it's so hard to fathom. This is what Radcliffe said. The average Russian recruit survives just 20 to 30 minutes at the front in Ukraine before being killed or wounded, CIA Director John Radcliffe said Wednesday. marking the first time an American intelligence official has publicly confirmed how lethal the battlefield has become for Moscow's forces. So Ukraine's winning, Russia's losing. Radcliffe made the assessment at the Pennsylvania Defense and Innovation Subject Summit, and he attributed the killing rate to Ukraine's cheap AI-guided attack drones. And then he said this, and you know, I want to be forgiving. Anyone can make a hyperbolic statement like that in a speech, but he went beyond that. He said, our intelligence is consistent with some of the open source reporting you may have seen in Ukraine, Radcliffe said. So their reporting is consistent with a propaganda machine that's completely controlled by Zelensky and his administration. There is no independent media. You know this. You went to Ukraine as a member of the media. You know that there is no objective reporting coming out of Ukraine. So for the head of the American CIA to quote, you know, open source reporting from Ukraine is not just beyond belief, but it's really disappointing. And you know, again, it said the figure had previously circulated in Ukrainian open source reporting. U.S. intelligence now says it matches its own findings. And he went on and he talked about how drone warfare is the great equalizer, allowing a smaller resource-constrained Ukraine to hold off Russia for more than 4 years. Well,
the problem is he's not giving the flip side, right? Because the same thing's happening on the other side, probably to a much more, greater extent. It's a sin of omission. I mean, it really is propaganda 101. I mean, you're not telling the truth because you're not telling all the truth, right?
Well, yes, I totally agree, but it's also an object example of this inability to think logically. So let's talk about logic. You know, part of logic is you have to say it out loud in a calm, cool, collected manner. And then remember what I said, no emotions, all thinking brain, and thinking into the future about not just what you're doing, about what you're doing right now, and its both intended and unintended consequences. So just for the words, Russian recruits last 20 to 30 minutes on the front. Just if you said those out loud, and then you don't have to have been in the military, and then think about it. Okay, how would they know that? Well, the only way you'd know that is if you somehow had insider knowledge, spies, who could monitor a representative sample, let's say 100, maybe 1,000 of new recruits, and then you watch them go from their final rear echelon staging base to what in this article is called the front lines. There are no real front lines. The front line is a drone front line. Behind that is drone operators and lead squads. And then behind that are groups of forces waiting to exploit whatever the drone forces and the shock troops accomplish forward, which is just a common sense method of modern day warfare that the Russians have been fighting now for at least the last 2 years, at least since 24, since Kursk. So you'd realize, okay, and then what? So you follow them all the way to the front. Now you actually are monitoring the new recruits on the front. And this is someone with a stopwatch, right? Because if they die within 20 to 30 minutes, that means some die within 10 to 15 minutes. Others at the long end die at around 30 to 45 minutes. So not only would they be dying because a missile doesn't just hit a new recruit, all the individuals around them would be dying too. And if that was the case, the front lines for Russia would have collapsed a long time ago. So it's impossible to obtain a statistic like this. It doesn't make any sense. And then from an empirical standpoint, if you do your homework, this is the non-emotional, and you monitor the myriad of Telegram channels that report on the war with raw video, or if you just watch someone like Patrick Lancaster, who's the only American reporting from behind Russian lines, you see their front lines all the time, and guys are well fed, well equipped, not with them some 1,000-yard stare. They're working the mission, and they certainly appear to be working it very well. So on all these fronts, you can prove that this is not only a hyperbolic statement, but a non-provable statement that has no basis in fact. And that's the head of the CIA. So very, very disappointing, but it doesn't stop there. Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, we have the video. It's the video next. Do you want that?
I want to play that video of Kane.
Okay. All right, here we go.
I can't hear it. Can you?
In the war between Russia and Ukraine, who do we want to win?
Sir, I want Ukraine to win.
Is Russia America's friend?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear your question.
Is Russia America's friend?
I think that depends on your definition of friend. I think it's a complicated relationship. But no, I don't think they're our friends.
Thank you.
So, again, very disappointing that General Kane would say that in public, say it to Congress. It certainly changes my opinion of him. And it should give everyone.
That was intentional. Whoever he represents want to stop any kind of rapprochement between Moscow and the U.S. It seems to me. That was my take.
I can't the motive for it other than what I just said, this inability to think logically. It's not just these politicians, but many of these senior CIA intelligence officers, not just our country. Obviously, the MI6 is completely, under the spec. But it's disappointing because these last two individuals are the ones who sit in meetings with President Trump. Right here. What's the logic of why behind what you just said? Why is Russia not our friend? Give me 3 reasons why they're not our friend. And I would submit to you, he couldn't even come up with one, because there's nothing, if you understand what Russia has said, if you understand what happened in Alaska when they met a year and a half ago, you can't make any sense. They've committed. They are open to negotiation. We're negotiating with Dmitriev still continuously, but you have this infrastructure that's providing friction against it, and it's friction against peace. He said he wants Ukraine to win, and win means to break apart Russia, and for Putin to fall. So it's something else. It's sobering, but it's pointing to this bigger crisis, this inability to think logically. And so you have all of what they've said, and the Kane thing just happened. Same with the Radcliffe. But now let's look at what's going on the battlefield. And the next one is the article from the Kyiv Post, which is, Zelensky's facing this deepening crisis on the home front. And if you've seen the films of the protests in Maidan, which are actually pretty funny because they're not real. This one's being called the cardboard revolution because all the protesters, for some reason, have the same type of cardboard that they're writing all these messages on. And no one brought the equivalent of butcher paper, or no one brought like a couple of pieces of wood glued together with, writing on it. They all have this cardboard. And it, just like the original Maidan protests, you can tell a lot by just looking at who's there, what they're doing, and the common patterns of the people, what they're doing. So, what's the deepening political crisis? Well, let's transition to that right now. It started with the firing of Mikhailo Fedorov, 35 years old. He was the Minister of Defense. And so, when he got fired and then these protests started, I asked why. And so I went into the archives of the Kyiv Post back to 2019 to find the first articles about Fedorov. So in 2019, Zelensky's political party announced who it was bringing in to run the country after Zelensky won the election, and it listed the 15 most influential individuals, and number 6 was Mikhailo Fedorov. He was 28 at the time, and here's his background. He is a digital advisor to Zelensky's office. Fedorov was in charge of Zelensky's social media activity during the presidential campaign. So the propaganda, remember, which attracted millions of followers and became the main tool for sharing campaign messages. The reason it was the main tool was because Zelensky did what became what we know is the Biden approach to an election. He didn't do any debates. He didn't make any public speeches, any public appearances. All he did was communicate over social media, and all the people of Ukraine got were social media and mainstream Ukrainian media reports of how great he was and how far ahead he was in the polls leading up to the election. So, Zelensky's job after 19, or Fedorov's job, was to promote digitalization of government services, what he termed a state in a smartphone. And whenever I read stuff like that, my brain shifts to the corporate side. Any company anyone's been in the last 10 years, they've heard this about their company. We're digitalizing everything. We're going to have everything available on an iPad or a smartphone. And of course, if you were in that company, it never works. It never turns out right. So this is a guy who had no background except digital services, his own company, whose only business was with Zelensky's company, which was Kvartal Concert Entertainment Firm, was his biggest client. He didn't even make his money or his fame in a legitimate business. It was a part of this massive money laundering scheme that was launched in 19 for Zelensky and all of his supporters. So, since his appointment, and it was just, I think he was appointed in either January or February of this year, Fedorov, the word on Fedorov was he was instrumental in fighting corruption and the transformation of the AFU into a technologically dominant force. No one knows why he was fired, but when you find out his only connection to government was Zelensky, you wonder, why did Zelensky fire this guy? Well, the main reason turns out he issued a report, which I'll summarize in a second, about what's wrong with the Ukrainian military and how to fix it. And at the top of that list was that Syrskyi needs to go. And Syrskyi found out about that and gave Zelensky an ultimatum: it's either him or me. Before he left, and this is very interesting, again, in the archives, buried in the Kyiv Post archives, he issued what's wrong with the Ukrainian armed forces. And he started with Ukraine's armed forces are fighting at the tactical level and instead of the strategic level. And this is actually a good recommendation. And instead of strategic, think logically, because strategic means just what we said about logic. You're always thinking 2 steps ahead. In other words, if you touch a rolling ball, you change its future trajectory and you change where it ends up in. So over time, if you use time as your friend, if you touch that ball enough times, you can direct that ball to land, as end up in the spot that you want it. That's what strategy is. And that's what you've had a complete, complete absence of on the Ukraine side, while even Ukrainian leaders such as Sirski, in an interview he did 2 months ago, mentioned one of the strengths of Russia is their strategic thinking. They think about the future. Everything they're doing right now is touching that rolling ball, moving it toward their final objective, which we've gone over many times. And they stick to it. You cannot get them off of their strategy, because they understand at this point that it not only makes sense, but how effective it is. He then went on to say brigades and corps have been fragmented. This is something we pointed out. Brigades can't determine how many battalions they have. Battalions don't know how many people they have. And this is from this constant tactical reactionary approach to military ops, which is, as soon as you're losing in one area, you take a couple companies, a couple battalions from off the line, and you send them there on trains and automobiles, and you do these human wave attacks. And that's thinking tactically instead of strategically. He talked about supplies, and this was his big baby. The supply problem is fundamental. Over the past 5 months, we've had more drones. We've purchased more drones than in the last year, but most units have not gotten any of them because everything is distributed manually. And if you're loyal, you get something. If you're not, you don't. And that's why, according to him, he launched this digitalization system, which is revealing. Hey, can you put yours on mute, Todd? Yeah. So this is why he launched the system, and the system did not work. And that's why really he was fired. And again, back to anyone who's worked in the corporate world, whenever a new IT platform is released, to great fanfare, it never works. It's always full of problems. You always have IT hotlines on fire for the next weeks or months. And it takes time to work out the bugs of any IT solution. So that's really what got him fired. But he goes on and gives some other very insightful non-propaganda views of what's wrong with the Ukrainian military. And he says it's impossible to carry out any systemic approach or project because you constantly run into, but why, but how? And that includes human capital. He says there's no analysis of human capital. We don't even analyze losses, but decisions about who should be supported, who should not, who should be reinforced, and who should not are still based on loyalty. And then he talks about any type of new initiative is blocked by bureaucratic crossfire. In 6 months at the Ministry of Defense, we've not been able to change the organizational structure because the general staff refuses to approve it. At first, they said the name was wrong or something was missing from the explanation, and there's no need to bring in new people. So we talked about this. I wrote an article about it that, the main British advisor to the creation of the Ukrainian military called this out in 2021, very bravely. He just said, we have not made any headway in crushing the bureaucracy that does not allow Ukraine to be an effective fighting. Through this admission by Fedorov. So to all of those problems, Fedorov, his recommendations were threefold. One was changing both the commander-in-chief, Sirski, and the chief of He also proposed leveling out the front line and implementing a doctrine based on principle of not losing personnel where it can be avoided. Stop the human wave attacks is what he's trying to say. And then he says the allocation of all resources through the core personnel, drones, artillery. We've got to stop the infighting at the core level. And, you know, that's a critical for resources, beans, bullets, and personnel. And they fight over those resources. And it's one of the things that creates this doom loop of exaggerating successes and hiding failures. But that's what goes on between corps. And to quell it, you need a leader who is logical and who reinforces policies like, you got the same thing they got. You used yours, they haven't used theirs yet. If you want some of theirs, you need to deal with them. That's how you do it on a logic-based battlefield. But that's not happening, and that's what's creating a lot of this discord at the brigade level and below for Ukraine. So, you know, on the one hand, Fedorov was definitely an intelligent, at least partially logic-based thinker. He was not equipped to run the Department of Defense, never been in the military before, but he exposed a lot of the fundamental errors that were going on in the government and in the military. And of course, this brought out the AFU-linked deep state accounts, who immediately began calling for Syrski's removal in favor of Fedorov. Well, Syrsky, I agree, he needed to be removed. He's, you know, Soviet-trained, doctrinal thinker. He's been behind everything from Kursk, which along with Zelensky, but he rubber-stamped it forward, and the human wave attacks. So he resigned yesterday. But what does this say about, you know, what does this say about this IO op? And so I look back again through Ukrainian media, and I didn't know this, but when this IO campaign started, which was about a month and a half ago, Zelensky announced his 40-day secret operation that was supposed to end with Russia on its knees and Putin begging for a ceasefire. So all the things, the Wildberry warehouse blowing up, these attacks around Moscow of apartment buildings and random trucks, was part of this 40-day secret operation that somehow they convinced themselves would bring Russia to its knees and make Putin beg for a ceasefire. But what ends up
Pete, there's also one other layer on this that I'm being told from my sources, is there's also an internal fight over the spoils, the money laundering that's been going on between Fedorov and Zelensky. And so there's a fight for the money as well behind the scenes, because they're all sending money offshore. But back to you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And they're related, because you have to walk a tightrope. You have to somehow win on the battlefield, but not disrupt the massive money laundering campaign that is the engine behind all the resources provided to the military and the lifeline for the military if they want to have any chance of winning or holding their own on the battlefield. But none of this has happened. And in fact, you know, the opposite has happened. Ukraine is losing terrain at a rate that we haven't seen in a long time. They've not taken back any major terrain themselves. They're losing people. And of course they are. Why would Zelensky fire his minister of defense and his military chief of staff, the equivalent of our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Why would he fire them at the end of his 40-day secret operation to bring Russia to his knees? Because it didn't work. And in the process, it exposed some of the corruption. And so Zelensky, desperate men make desperate moves. I think he made a bad move here, firing both these guys. And of course, his prime minister also resigned, which, leaves him in an even bigger lurch. So
the other thing that could be going on is the West could be preparing the way to get rid of Zelensky. It could be some kind of op happening in the background for that as well.
It could be, but it would, and there's no doubt about that. That just adds. So it's already a bureaucracy, but imagine a bureaucracy that includes foreign bureaucrats. That's what's happening in Russia right now, or in Ukraine right now, because they not only have to deal with their own, money-motivated bureaucrats, they have British bureaucrats, French, German, and U.S. bureaucrats opining, giving them advice, telling them, yeah, but if you do this, then, you're going to lose this. So there's no logic in that. That's the political influence, the emotional influence that keeps Ukraine from having any chance to think logically, to think strategically, and to actually hold their own on the battlefield. So just one more, I think there's one more slide here. The one that shows the R-280 highway in Nova Russia. Can you call that one up?
It should be up. It's up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this just shows you, this is a major battlefield milestone. If you just look at where that highway goes, it basically shows, so on the right side of the map, the Zaporizhia Oblast sits right by the far right side of the R-280 highway. So that alone is significant. But then this highway runs all the way down to Odessa, Crimea, and it just shows you, with that secure, Ukraine is one port, the Odessa port, which is being bombed into smithereens after the bombing of Moscow. They're one port away from being completely landlocked and having no ability to have cargo ships bring in supplies or send out supplies, which they depend on for revenues, their grain especially. So it's a major, major battlefield milestone. And again, it's the only empirical proof you need to see that Russia is not losing and Ukraine is not winning. It's exactly the opposite. But back to that theme, desperate men make desperate moves. And instead of just confronting the reality of the situation and pivoting off it, they fall back into making up propaganda, making up lies, and poking the bear, which no one should be for, because this is an issue that affects the citizens of the world, not just Ukraine and Russia, but onward they continue.
Well, Pete, that's a lot of information. I think that's enough for today. So we'll close it out here, and we'll be back next week. But thanks for putting all that together, and we'll see you next week. And there's no better show to really lay out what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. So thank you, Pete, for all your hard work, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, Todd. Take care. Stay safe over there.
Nuclear wasn't a product that was developed and to sell, really. It really was a journey to get me well after my experience trying to immigrate and get married to an American citizen in order to get my green card. Towards the end, they send you for a medical, and that's where they sat me down and gave me 16 vaccines in one sitting. At the time, I knew when I was going through it that it's probably not good, but I didn't realize that I'm about to go through the worst health experience of my life. And that's when I went on this journey and understand that nutrition is actually your medicine. I've always heard the old people say your food's in your garden, but we didn't get it. And your body is always trying to heal itself. I mean, you know, when you cut yourself in a couple of days, it heals. And that is the process of homeostasis. Your body is always trying to, every cell in your body is always healing itself. And just like anything, if you bake a cake or you build a house, you need the right ingredients to achieve the result. Now, if you don't have the correct nutrition and you're not eating the correct food, it's like trying to build a house without bricks. Now, a lot of people, they say, what does nuclear do? Nuclear itself does nothing. It's not designed to do anything. Your body does the work. It gives your body all the things it needs, balanced in, and it works together to deliver the correct nutritional supplement that you need as a human being to function normally.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today. We really did, putting all this together. We're really having some good efforts. Join us tomorrow. We'll be in Patron. Hope you enjoyed it. Got some great guests coming on tomorrow, as always. So we'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 to noon on the SCIF. Thank you.